You're with Julian on the brown note and a perfect 10 album review and a regular series on this show. I did a number last year, Love's Forever Changes, Bowie's Heroes, Clips, Hell Has No Fury. But I haven't done one for a while, and I'm going to do Sufjan Stevens' Come On Feel It, Illinoise. Now, it goes under various titles, including a lot of people annoyingly calling it Illinois, which misses the greatest album title this century. Call it Come On Feel It, Illinoise. It's a fantastic title. I'm doing it because in my end-of-year polls last year, Sufjan Stevens hit another of his probably three pinnacles with the album Javelin. I had that at number 2 in my albums of the year, and also I had Will Anybody Ever Love Me as my second track of the year. And a few years before that, Carrie and Lowell was my second best album of the year, and I should have known better, it was my number 1 track of the year. So celebrating her return to his highest form, he's sort of like a Pokemon, I'm going to do a review of the album that put him on the map. The singer-songwriter from Detroit, Michigan, is already heralded as one of the century's greatest musical talents. I think the album from 2005, which was the first time I'd even heard of him, even though it is his 5th album, is one of the most ambitious album-length projects this century. Alongside its probable only peer in a certain way is NFR by Lana Del Rey. It's a gargantuanly, ridiculously ambitious album, very long, and the conceit at the time which made his name, I mean, it's his 5th album, and Michigan, which was his 3rd album, Seven Swans, were both well-received albums. But I think the lid got blown off with Come On Feel It, Illinois, and everyone went nuts. And I certainly did at the time. The conceit at the time was that he was going to make an album about every state in America. It was one of the funniest conceits from an artist at the time. And we still want him to. Just one more, at least. Like, I think he should do one per decade. So we got Michigan, and then we got the Illinois album. He later admitted it was all a joke. It's an album that is it's an album that is like a musical, and I believe they've staged it. It feels like watching a musical, the way that the songs enter and leave, and they're split broadly along. The backbone of the album is these very maximalist 6-minute long pop operas, and there are probably 5 or 6 on the album. Which are, some of the album's more monumental tunes. But then they are mixed with a lot of musical interludes and also more fragmentary and abstract and stark music, analogous more to Carrie and Lowell, what would be coming with that. And I think that's the way with the... even the titles are just amazing. I think that's the way with the first track, which is a very short 2-minute... concerning the UFO sighting near Highland, Illinois, has this amazing darting piano figure and the most eerily beautiful vocal melody from Sufjan Stevens. And the way the flute is fluttering around in it reminds me of Van Morrison's Astral Weeks, particularly Beside You. I think that track, it's such a gorgeous track, an unusual way to enter such a maximalist project with one of its style, and to follow that with a very sparse instrumental, to give you an indication of how amusing this album often is, and how clever and how often fun it is. The title for the second track, which is a whopping 2 minutes long, is The Black Hawk War, or How to Demonize an Entire Civilization and Still Feel Good About Yourself in the Morning, or We Apologize for the Inconvenience, but You're Going to Have to Leave Now, or I Have Fought the Big Knives and Will Continue to Fight Them Until They're Off Our Lands. And there are many long titles, and that one lasts nearly as long as the actual track itself. Come On Feel It, Illinois, one of 2 de facto title tracks. It's not a de facto title track, it actually is a title track, but I kind of believe that a later track on the album is actually more of the centerpiece. But this is the second centerpiece to me. It's an amazing widescreen pop moment. It's got this sort of musical vibe about it, not music hall. It's very ebullient. A lot of these tracks have really interesting rhythmic things going on, like samba feel. Like there's very little 4/4 beats going on this album. It's very interesting rhythmically. Political lyrics. It plods along at a furious rate of knots, and when it gets a few minutes in, it drops into the most gorgeous musical passage, which is a rip-off of The Cure's So Close to Me, which is clearly deliberate, but it feels, when it comes to the end of that passage and it swells back up, it just feels absolutely triumphant with him singing I Cried Myself to Sleep That Night. The melodies on this album stick so hard. And that's what I felt about NFR from Lana Del Rey, which was it was one of the best collections of verse, bridge, and chorus melodies this century. Both albums are. And just about every song on here has a sticky melody. At least 2/3 of them stay with you long after, and particularly that track. The starkest and most challenging lyric on the album is track 4, John Wayne Gacy, which seeks to, and a point I never made at the start is that the album, Illinois and Michigan, was supposed to be about the state. So referencing history, people, cultural artifacts, and so on. So John Wayne Gacy, the serial killer, it might be a slightly self-conscious lyric, but he humanizes a serial killer to bring up that John Wayne Gacy used to, entertain local children by dressing up as a clown and was a actually really liked person. It was in his darkest moments, and he talks about putting on a mask and how we all put on a mask, and it's a very powerful lyric. Jacksonville, just another beautiful melody, cascading, picking, and the whole Andrew Jackson quote coda chorus is just another winning hook. There are so many hooks on this album. Decatur, or a round of applause for your stepmother. Just like, if it's not a really stark song on this album or a maximalist pop song, he does these hokey ukulele sort of winning pop songs, which aren't really like anything else. He does it twice on the album, and I think that is a great example. And the rhyming of Decatur with an amazing array of words like alligator, aviator, debater, emancipator is very funny. The short one last woohoo for the Pullman, a train, I believe, is 6 seconds long and very funny, even though it is just a stupid joke. It's like his mind is all over the shop on this album. It's just like this kaleidoscope of it. He's just one of the most talented people to have made music this century. And I've got a lot of time for people that are good lyricists. And he has continually proven to make amazing lyrics across the board, whether it's politicized, whether it's personal. He's very, very good on that. And very few people ever are. For me, it says here, go Chicago, go yeah. I've always thought that track was just called Chicago. To me, it's the centerpiece of the whole album. Much like the Illinois track earlier, those are the two rivals for the most outstanding 6-minute pop moment on the album, with the kitchen sink and every other, like with full-blown string arrangements and choirs. A lot of the elements that have cropped up in Sufjan Stevens' music over the years, he's reused. And one of my favourite, even up until Will Anybody Ever Love Me, is a very amateurish, almost child-sounding choir, which he often drops to just amazing effect. In that song, it's pretty devastating, but he uses it a lot on his big widescreen pop moments as well. And on Go Chicago, Go Yeah is arguably the finest track on a masterpiece of an album. Gargantuan, again the halting rhythms, strings, drops into choirs. I made a lot of mistakes being its central hook. It's gorgeous, and it's for an artist known for including his Christianity in his music. It's probably the most Christian song on the album as well. Very celebratory, sublime coda. The trumpet repeating the vocal melody is just gorgeous. Our masterpiece. And Kazimierz Polski Day, another one like Decatur, which has got this real sort of swampy homespun vibe to it. It's another fantastic track. The interlude to the Workers of Rock River Valley is a really potent jazz interlude. The stomping guitar riff on The Man of Metropolis Steals Our Hearts is the biggest guitar moment on the album. And he does these whomping bits and then drops to verses that are always quite sparse when they first arrive, which he does over and over on the album. I can't go through every track because this is 23 tracks. They Are Night Zombies, They Are Neighbours, They Have Come Back From the Dead is a masterpiece. Here the maximalist pop ones aren't the same as they were earlier in the album. This one's like funny and eerie and black comedy. And the funkiest beat on the album, they've got sort of a military tattoo. We are awakened by the axe, night of the living dead at last. And mentions the nation's past, I guess, in a slightly politicised reference. The Sears Tower is like as dark and sparse and as anything on Carrion Lowell, and he mentions his mother in it as well. The final epic, The Tallest Man, The Broadest Shoulders, rounds out the album before it finishes on a very eerie and odd, and actually the Out of Egypt instrumental is probably the most fully realised instrumental on the album. It lasts for 4 minutes, which is way more than virtually all of the others. Overall, it is a masterpiece. I don't give 10 out of 10 to stuff that is without flaws, which a lot of people say, well, if there's a flaw, then you have to take a point off. That's not how I see 10 out of 10. I see 10 you can have an album that's 7 out of 10 and not have a single flaw. But it doesn't scrape the absolute atmospheric heights of ambition, of satisfaction, of brilliance. And that's where 10 out of 10 comes for me. Something that over the years has continued to enthrall me and only ever grown better. An astonishing artistic achievement. Out of nowhere, there was nothing like it at all. The amount of great pop melodies on this album alone would triumph most pop artists' whole career, and we get a whole ton of the wildest imagination on arrangements and lyrics and humour and genuinely heartfelt introspective looks at the world. And obviously he would just go on after that. You know, the Age of Az was a lot of people felt a letdown, but it was still a very strong album. I've got a lot of time for that. And Carrion Lowell, that's not a bad run. Michigan, Seven Swans, Illinois, Age of Az, Carrion Lowell. The one I didn't like was The Ascension, which came in 2020. I felt that was a really strong under 40-minute album with about 90 minutes of music, which I didn't really enjoy wading through. So it's great to see him back at the absolute peak with an album, Javelin, that actually referenced Illinois, Age of Az, and Carrion Jewel all on the same record. So my triumphant review of Come On Feely Illinois is a rolled gold 10 out of 10 for Sufjan Stevens.